Hi, this is Trepacer, and welcome to Trepacer Saturday Reviews. Now, normally I review two movies, but today I had to go visit my brother, so I left early, so I didn't really have time to watch anything. I got back later in the day, so I didn't have time to really do that. But I do want to continue my tradition of reviewing two movies, though. And I picked two classic movies, in my opinion, okay, to review, and I have them here, so let's discuss them and I like sharing my knowledge of movies and my enjoyment of movies to fellow moviegoers. So hopefully you will enjoy these two movies I'm talking about. And the two movies I'm talking about in question is William Wilder's The Big Country, starring Gregory Peck. This is a great cast. Gene Simmons, Carol Baker, Charlton Heston, and Burl Ives. And I think Chuck Connors is this as well. And also Picnic, starring William Holden and what's her name? Kim Novak. Okay, I'm going to go with The Big Country first. Okay, this is a Western that I saw, I think, on AMC years ago or something, and I just really liked the story a lot, so I bought the Blu-ray. I found it was on Blu-ray, I bought it. Okay, basically, this is the story of retired wealthy sea captain James McKay, played by Gregory Peck. He arrives out to the West, with his fiancee, Pat Terrell, who's played by Carol Baker. She's a spoiled, to put it plainly, she's a spoiled brat. Okay, she lives with her father, Major Henry Terrell. Okay, and the foreman on that ranch is Steve Leach, played by Charlton Heston, and he of course immediately takes a dislike to Jane McKay because, first of all, he's a city folk, and secondly, because he's in love with Pat Terrell. Okay, even though she's engaged to James McKay, Steve Leach is in love with her, who's been in love with her, all his life. So he kind of takes an instant dislike to Jane McKay, played by Gregory Peck. Anyway, upon arriving in town, there's an incident between another family, between Jane McKay and Buck Hennessy, who's the son of Burl Ives' character, who's Rufus Hennessy. He's like the big wig. And there's two families in this movie, actually. There's the Hennessy's and the Terrells. And Rufus Hennessy, played by Burl Ives, is in charge of, the Hennessy's. And then you have Major Henry Terrell, played by Charles Bickford. He's in charge of the Terrells. And they're bickering against each other, basically over water rights on land that's owned by a lady named Julie Maragon, played by Gene Simmons, who's a school teacher. Okay, and there's an incident, which, without spoiling it, that happens between Buck Hennessy, played by Chuck Connors, and Gregory Peck's character of James McKay in town, which kind of makes the Western folk think that basically that James McKay is a coward because he kind of backs down. Okay, but he does not for the reason you think. Okay, but instantly people think, oh, he's a city folk and he's a tenderfoot and he's soft, and even his fiancee Patricia Terrell, who's a spoiled brat, played by Carol Baker, thinks that he should have stood up for himself, and she kind of basically calls off their engagement because she's basically she lets her pride basically dictate that she's hurt that he didn't really stick up for her, and and he tries to explain exactly why he did what he did, but she's not having it. Okay, and by the way, he meets Julie Maragon, played by Gene Simmons, and they start up a friendship, and they actually, start, talking, conversing with each other, and they really kind of hit it off. Okay, and of course, Chuck Connors' character, Buck Hennessy, he has a thing for Julie Maragon, even though she doesn't see it that way with him, but he has a thing for her, and he kind of takes exception to James McKay being friends with her, and so you can imagine what comes from that. Anyway, this is basically the story. Basically, is about the two warring families, the Hennessy's and the Terrells, fighting over this land for water rights. And of course, James McKay, played by Gregory Peck, is in the middle of it because, like I say, he's the fiance of Patricia Terrell, and then of course he runs afoul of the Hennessy's, specifically Buck Hennessy, played by Chuck Connors, and also Charlton Heston's character Steve Leach, who's also really in love with Patricia Terrell, played by Carol Baker, so he doesn't like James McKay either. And basically, it's an old-fashioned Western, and with with good acting in this, and the story actually is a lot more involving than you think at first, and it's really well played and great performances, I think, by the whole cast in this. Just absolutely a special mention to Burl Ives, who plays Rufus Hennessy, who's like the leader of the Hennessy's, and he's a tough SOB, but he's a man's man. I guess that's the word you would say. Okay, and it's just a fascinating story to watch. Okay, like I said, great performances, and just one of the best cast you can see. Within the movie, you can see Gregory Peck, Gene Simmons, Carol Baker, Charlton Heston, and Burl Ives, and Chuck Connors, all in the same movie. And this movie is, like I said, it's one of the better westerns that I've seen. So I'm going to give The Big Country. I'm going to give Big Country an 8 out of 10. Yeah, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It's just that good to me. Okay, like I said, great cast, great story about the West, and basically James Hennessy, James McKay, his entry into this Western town, and his experiences and stuff, and what he has to go through. Okay, and it's just a real good character study, a good Western, nice violence in it, and romance, and it's, again, 8 out of 10. Definitely worth getting. The Big Country. Now, this next movie is called Picnic. Okay, this is a movie that came out in 1955. Okay, starring William Holden and Kim Novak. And it takes place over Labor Day weekend, I think. Well, around that time of Labor Day. Okay, and this is based on a play as well. Okay, it's basically the story of Hal Carter, played by William Holden, who's like a drifter. Kind of blows into this to this small town, to meet his old fraternity buddy, Alan Benson, played by Cliff Robinson, who happens to be the richest, son of the richest man in town. And Hal, played by William Holden, is kind of a braggart. He's he likes to brag about things, even though he's really not really accomplished anything. But he likes to brag, but because he's, like I said, because he's a man and a man that blows into town, he kind of upsets and causes waves in this small town. That's what he does. He affects a lot of different people in a lot of different ways by coming into town. And like I said, he's a drifter, but he talks a good game, but he hasn't really ever accomplished anything. Okay, and like I said, he comes to visit his pal, Alan Benson, played by Cliff Robinson. And of course, during the course of this weekend, he meets different ladies, and this movie is basically about the different effect that he has on the different women in town. Okay, and Kim Novak, plays Madge Owens. She's like the girl of Alan Benson. Okay, and then you also have what's her name? I want to make sure I mention her. What's her name? Because Rosalind Russell, there it is, who plays Rosemary Sidney. She's like a school teacher, who's basically goes out with this character named Howard Bevins, who she wants to get him to marry her. And then you also have Madge Owens' mother, Flo Owens, and then you have little Millie, played by Susan Strasberg, who's like the younger sister of Madge Owens. And like I said, every young guy is in love with Madge Owens. Kim Novak is a beauty in this movie. And again, this is the story about how Hal Carter, his very presence, upsets the lives of everybody in this small town. And it's a really, really good movie. Like I said, it was based on a play. Okay, and there's a song in this, I think it's called Moonglow, that was like a #1 hit because of this movie. And it's based, and like I said, William Holden was a little older than I was reading a little bit about this movie. He's a little older at the time than the character was supposed to be in the play, but they wanted star power with it, so they convinced William Holden to take the part, and he's absolutely fantastic in this. And I like the chemistry that he has with Madge Owens, because Madge wants to escape this small town. She wants more out of life, to be someone's girl. And like I said, when her and there's a great scene in this movie where basically Hal Carter is basically teaching little Millie Owens how to dance, and then Madge Owens kind of comes onto the scene, and then they start dancing, and it's just, you can feel the electricity in the air. And like I said, his effect on everybody in town, even his pal Alan Benson, is a sight to see. And this is, like I said, one of the better movies from the 50s. And again, I absolutely love this movie. I think this movie's on. This is the VHS, but I think this movie's on Blu-ray now, which I gotta get. And again, I would give Picnic an 8 out of 10 as well, because it's, like I said, you get great actors in this movie. The story is nice, and like I said, this effect of this stranger on this small town and everything that comes from that, and you get great romance and a great drama, and it's a really and a love story, and it's really good, and definitely worth getting as well. Okay, so again, I would give Picnic an 8 out of 10. Definitely worth getting. One of the better movies from the 50s. And again, Big Country. Again, I would give this an 8 out of 10 as well. Nice western, basically about the small retired sea captain who comes to the small town. Well, comes to this western town with his spoiled brat fiance, and what happens. Basically, what happens. He gets in the middle of between these two warring families out west. Okay, and it's a really good character study and a really great. You get great actors in this movie as well. It's a good western as well, good drama, and romance too as well. Okay, and definitely worth getting an 8 out of 10 for a Big Country. So those are my reviews for those two movies. Let me know what you think of those, if you've seen them or not. Feel free to leave comments down below. And this is Trepacer saying so long and take care.